So tonight we are talking all about self-love, why that's important. We're not able to get this up on Facebook right now. So when we do, we're going to put it up on our YouTube channel. And please feel free to share that link with as many people as you know, because right now, in order for us to make this transition and come out of this transition as happy and healthy as we can, we have to start with loving ourselves. Loving ourselves is the most important thing that we can do. And we're going to learn why tonight. So, right now, I'm going to go ahead and start. There we go. So, self love, how to love yourself. And why is that important? And the most important reason is because you cannot give what you do not have. If you cannot love yourself, you're not going to be able to love others. You can't give off of an empty tank. So, starting with your foundation, which is you, is the most important thing that you could possibly do. And we're going to learn about some of the blockages that we have about that. But first off, I kind of want to share something that's been going on for those of you that are practice members. I'm sure for the past few months you have felt that there's been something else going on up underneath the surface, maybe behind the scenes of the practice. And this is one of the main reasons that I got inspired to create this talk and really got shoved down this pathway of learning this stuff myself. Over the past few months, my wife Victoria and I have decided to get a divorce. We've decided to separate. We still very much care for each other, but we're just not able to give to each other in the ways that either one of us really needs. And we have been through so much counseling. We actually started counseling even before we got married. So we have tried and given this a really, really good shot at making progress. And whenever Victoria first told me that this is kind of what she wants, it hit me really, really hard. And I started looking back at all of the different ways that I made mistakes in the relationship. And one thing just kept coming back over and over and over again as the root problem as to why I made the mistakes that I made, which was I developed so much more of a capacity to help and to love others than I did for myself. And because I did not develop that capacity to love and care for and support myself, my ability to fully express that to those closest to me was very, very inhibited. So after this realization, it was just blatantly obvious. I need to start learning a lot more about what it means to love myself. I mean, if you would have asked me a year ago, I'd have been like, yeah, sure, I love myself. But whenever it really looked at my life, that was not really showing up. That was not really tangible in my life. It was a nice thought, it was a nice concept, but it wasn't actually a thing. It wasn't real. So I know a lot of us struggle with this. I know a lot of us struggle with this because I know a lot of what goes on in some of your lives and in the average American's life. And the love is not there for ourselves. We distract ourselves instead of being with ourselves. We numb ourselves out. We soothe ourselves with all sorts of drugs and concoctions and potions and lotions and television and video games and everything. But the root of that is it's tough to just sit and to just be with ourselves. And the reason why is there's not a lot of love that we can experience whenever we actually do that. So tonight's talk is all about what does that mean to love ourselves and how can we actually do that? So getting into this, first thing is why? why would loving ourselves be important? And like I said in the beginning, because we can't give what we don't have. So if we don't love ourselves, we're not going to be able to love others. But when we do love ourselves, there is a massive change in how the body responds, not only to itself, but to the outside world. Certain hormones and certain neurotransmitters like oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin start to really change the balance, and it changes the way that the brain functions. Whenever we do not feel love for ourselves, we claw and we nag and we try to get that from as many different sources as we possibly can. And all of those sources, they may be capable of giving us love, but if that love does not come from ourselves, we're never truly going to be fulfilled. It's really nice to have that love coming in from the outside, but that's only half the equation. That's only one side of the coin. Loving ourselves is a necessity first. So the reason why we need to love ourselves, we're going to learn a little bit more in this presentation. So why do we not love ourselves? That's a really good place to start. And I think for most of us in our society, not necessarily in our individual families, but in our society, we're really taught not to. We're kind of taught through social conditioning, through marketing, that most of our love is supposed to come from the outside. You know, you're supposed to find this person that's going to fulfill you, and you marry them, and Romeo and Juliet, which actually kind of what happens in a lot of relationships. But you know, the princess and Prince Charming, you're not going to be happy until you find your princess. You're not going to be in love until you find your Prince Charming, or until you get your diamonds, or until you get your big house, or until you get your job, or until you get your career, or whatever else it is. But our society does a pretty good job of teaching us that love is supposed to come from the outside instead of something that you generate yourself. Another reason that we don't love ourselves is we don't really see it modeled that much around us. A lot of times, our parents and our grandparents, it hasn't necessarily been something that they either know how to do, or it's something that they don't necessarily show. And keep in mind, just a few generations ago, generating self-love was not an important thing. Not that it wasn't a beneficial thing, but a few generations ago, survival was really important need that our ancestors had to focus on. They actually had to put thought and effort into. And in our society today, even if you were out on the streets homeless, there are so many safety nets. There's so many social organizations. There's so many people out there that are in service, to the point where we really don't, our physical survival is not really a big issue anymore. But this was not true 2 to 3 generations ago, some of us 1 to 2 generations ago. So keep in mind, whenever we look back at our family members, and notice that that wasn't necessarily modeled for us, it may have been that that just wasn't important for them, and that was appropriate at that time. But we're living in very different times now. So another thing is that we're not really rewarded for doing so. Again, a lot of what society teaches us, a lot of what our family might have taught us, our rewards were really based on specific achievements for others, specific achievements like in a test. You get an A, you're a good student, rather than how creative were you, or how much of yourself did you put into this, how much of your self-expression came through in this. It was really, the rewards were based on specific things, rather than how much love did you put into this. And some of us actually might have even been punished for doing so. It might have been told that, it's selfish, or, self-centered in a negative way, or that, we're not focused on others enough. And, or, there might have been some really needy people that were around us, people that definitely didn't know how to love themselves. And the only love they may have gotten was from us. And if they didn't get it, then they would kind of lash out at us. So another reason is we don't understand what it actually means to love ourselves. If we haven't been taught that loving ourselves is a good thing, if we haven't seen those authority figures around us model that, well, how do you know how to do that? Like, where does that information come from? Especially if we're not taking time to really spend digging into ourselves to really discover who we are, what loving ourselves look like, much less how to do it. And again, it might have come in conflict with what those around us wanted. If those around us, were more instinctual, if they're more survival based, if they were seeking to gain more in life than to give, then they may have used us at certain points to get the feeling of love, from us. And so if we start loving ourselves and then we quote unquote need them less, well, then that may have been very scary for them. And that they may have kind of punished us or shamed us for loving ourselves, really just because they were kind of scared to lose us. And like I said in the very beginning, there's a big difference between thriving and surviving. Love and loving ourselves definitely puts us more into the mentality and toward the mode and the lifestyle of thriving. But when we don't have our basic survival needs met, that doesn't make much sense. It doesn't make much sense to sit there, and love yourself while you have a tiger chasing you, or while there's a famine, or while you need to be planting your crops. So again, this whole concept of loving ourselves has really only been able to be expressed by very, very few individuals in societies throughout history. Most people throughout history have been so stuck in the survival portion of us that this would make absolutely no sense. But guess what? You are now in a society and in a time in history where now we're ready to let go of the survival-based mindset, the survival-based functions of our brain, and because they're not necessarily needed as much. Not that we're going to let go and put them aside and never pay attention to them, but we just don't need to think like that. We don't need to act like that anymore. So now it's time for something else, and that something else starts with love. So one of the other reasons that we actually get in the way of loving ourselves is this concept that I actually picked up from a book called Soulcraft. And in that book, they talk about what's called our loyal soldier. So the survival portion of us, there's a portion of us, and neurologically, that's a lower, more instinctual inner portion of the brainstem and the limbic system. This part of our neurology is set up for survival of our identity, on top of physical survival. And this part of us, its job is to defend us, okay? And we call this the loyal soldier. And the loyal soldier is based on a concept that in World War II, whenever a lot of the Japanese Navy soldiers, whenever their ships were sunk, they would end up getting stranded on these deserted islands. And it might have been years before they were rescued. One of them in the book he talks about was like 35 years on this deserted island alone before he was rescued. Well, these soldiers, they never knew that the war was over. And so they set up all of this stuff on the island. They stayed vigilant, and their vigilance, their focus on continuing the war effort actually is one of the main reasons that they were able to survive so long. But whenever they were rescued and brought back into civilization, brought back into society, it was very hard for them to believe that the war was over, because keeping that war going in their own minds is what kept them alive. So there's a lot of survival strategy tied up into the concept of being on guard, being defensive, always on the lookout for our survival. So the way that these loyal soldiers in Japan did an amazing job with this is they brought them home, they celebrated them, they gave them this big parade, and they just thanked them, and they flooded them with all of this gratitude so that they could feel that what they had done, the way that they had survived for so long, was a good thing. It wasn't something that they needed to be ashamed of. They weren't dumb because they didn't know that the war was over. So the first thing was, the gratitude. They showered them with gratitude. They continually reassured them that the war was over. And then they helped to redirect all of that vigilance that those soldiers had into different, other different jobs in society. So we have to recognize that each one of us has a loyal soldier. Each one of us has an instinctual portion of us, and the instinctual portions of us job is to protect, is to keep us alive at all cost. And part of that is to keep alive and protect our inner child. So there may have been times in our lives where we were forced to grow up, or we were forced to deal with circumstances that were well beyond our ability to kind of cope and to manage and to be able to process at that time. And so that there's an inner part of us which is still kind of struggling with that. And we have another part of us that's keeping that part protected, keeping us numb, keeping us vigilant, keeping certain emotions or certain memories suppressed. So we just have to recognize that survival requires different strategies for thriving. So what we want to do is, when we notice those parts of us, maybe the parts of us that continually critique us, or those parts of us that kind of, really have this mindset that shame or guilt is something that we need to carry around. Otherwise, if we feel too good about ourselves, maybe we won't work hard enough, we won't accomplish as much, whatever it is, we need to identify those parts of ourselves that are stuck in those survival strategies. And when we can identify those parts, when we can identify our loyal soldiers, the first thing that we want to do is we want to thank them. We want to flood ourselves with gratitude for those parts of us that have protected the other parts, for those parts of us that have pushed into productivity and gotten us to where we need to be based on survival needs. But we need to thank them, because at a certain time and a certain place, they were very beneficial. They did their job really, really well. And then the next step is to reassure those parts of us. Yes, that fight is over. Yes, that circumstance is over. Yes, that relationship is over. And now it's time to redirect. Now it's time to take all of that vigilance, all of that amazing capacity to protect and to plow through against all odds and against all circumstances, and redirect that focus, that willpower, that intention into something that is now going to be based on thriving, whatever that is for you. And again, right now we're kind of talking about love. So we really want to identify our loyal soldiers, and we want to love those loyal soldiers. There's not a single part of us that's bad, but when certain parts kind of jump into the driver's seat when they're not needed, that can kind of create some other problems. So one of the concepts that was really challenging for me, and I got this concept a little bit before I went into this big self-love process over the past few months, is this difference between being self-centered and selfish. Selfish is what most of us are kind of taught or are afraid of, and we really want to avoid, and it can be very destructive. Self-centered, however, is necessary in order for us to be able to present who we are and present our gifts to the world. So the main difference between self-centered and selfish is that self-centered is really about unattached to the outer world and to others. And unattached means that we're so grounded and centered in who we are. We're so fulfilled. We're so satisfied. We're so in love with who we are that it doesn't really matter what's going on around us. If we get into a situation and there's somebody that needs help and we have the ability to help, we can jump in and provide that help. But if we get into a situation and someone needs help and we cannot provide that help, we'll know that about ourselves. And we may be able to go get somebody who can help, or we just know that that situation is going to unfold like it needs to be, and we can move on without tearing ourselves up with guilt about something that we really could never do anything about. Selfish is about being detached from the outer world and others. And detached means we're numb to really what's going on. And therefore, we're going to be selfish in certain circumstances. We're going to try to take in circumstances that really are designed for us to be giving into. We'll get into circumstances in the outer world and we'll want to play the hero, and maybe someone does need help, but if we're selfish, we're not going to know what our gifts are, and so we're maybe going to try to get in there and help whenever we can't provide that help, and that can actually make the situation a lot worse. All right. When we're self-centered, we're really authentic. We're not trying to placate. We're not trying to please others. We're just able to truly be ourselves. And if we're in a certain circumstance and that doesn't please others, well, guess what? It's not a circumstance that we're supposed to be in. So being authentic, even in a situation in which our authenticity is not necessarily wanted, really is the best thing for ourselves and for others, because we're going to move into a situation or a circumstance in which our authenticity is wanted and is appreciated. But we won't get into that circumstance or scenario unless we get out of the other one. When we're selfish, we're going to be disconnected. Therefore, we're fractured. All right. We don't really know who we are. And we're going to try to play around with all of these different attributes that we're not. And that literally is lying. That's lying to ourselves, and that's lying to others. So whenever we're disconnected from who we truly are, or we're fractured, again, we're not really going to be able to be in those ideal circumstances or situations that are right for us. And if we are, it's not really going to be the us that shows up. All right. When we're self-centered, we're grounded in who we are. When we're selfish, because we're not grounded in who we are, we're going to be very reactive. We're going to get triggered all of the time. We're going to start acting out in much more instinctual ways, because those survival portions of us are going to be active a lot more than the thriving portions, because again, we're not really grounded in who we are. It's just more, of knee-jerk reactions going on. When we're self-centered, we're going to be full from the inside. And when we're full from the inside, we can give from the abundance and overflow without necessarily needing to get drained or become a martyr or sacrifice ourselves. Okay, so that means that everybody gets satisfied. Everybody gets what they need, because it's always coming from an abundance and an overflow from us. Okay, when we're selfish, that's always coming from a place of lack. There's not enough, so I've got to grab as much as I possibly can, and that's going to end up leaving everyone, including ourselves, a lot worse for the experience. Again, self-centered is about thriving, whereas selfish, that's just about thriving. So, what's going to happen when we do love ourselves? Well, if we can't, number one, like I said before, we can't give what we don't have. So when we truly start to love ourselves, we are going to be able to love others more in a way that actually is going to be fulfilling for them. Loving ourselves is really, according to the Bible, is the second most important commandment. Love thy neighbor, but then there's a second part of that, and that's as thyself. We cannot love others more than we love ourselves. We can try, and trust me, I tried with every fiber of my body, every fiber of my mind and my soul. But because I wasn't able to do that for myself, I wasn't able to really give that to the person that was supposed to be the closest to me. And when we love ourselves, we have more love to give. We don't need to suck. Literally, we don't need to suck it from the outside. We can actually give it because we're generating it from the inside. When we love ourselves, we are going to burden others less. Like I said, we're not going to suck as much. We're not going to try to draw all that love from the outside because we have it from the inside. Okay. When we love ourselves, we're going to be able to find our place in relationship. We're going to be able to find our place in society, our place in family, for not only our greatest health, but the health and the healing of others. But if we don't love ourselves enough to really be able to drop into our authenticity and be okay with our authenticity, we're not going to be able to acknowledge what our unique gifts are. And because we can't acknowledge our unique gifts, we're also not going to be able to acknowledge the unique gifts of others. And then that's, again, is going to make it a big challenge for us to find our real, authentic, and loving place, how we fit into the dynamics of what's happening around us. And when we love ourselves, we are going to be fully fueled to be able to handle change, to be able to handle stress, and to be able to handle adversity. And how much of that is going on in the world around us right now? A whole lot of it. So if there's one strategy that all of us need, it's going to be the strategy, the ability to love ourselves. Okay. One of the most important things, the first step in being able to love yourself, is time. Time is the single most non-renewable resource that we are ever going to come across. We only have a limited amount of time in this physical existence. And if we are not putting enough time into loving ourselves, it's going to create a lot of problems in the future for us and for those around you. You deserve just as much time as you give to others. Now, the way that you receive time for yourself can be very different. It can look different moment to moment, day to day, week to week, year to year. But taking that time is extremely important, even though what you do with that time may vary. And really, I want you to ask yourself, how much time do you spend on yourself? Is there a balance in the amount of time that you truly spend with yourself? Not being distracted, not just being alone, staring at a computer or a TV screen, but real intimate time with yourself. I'd be willing to bet that whenever you really ask yourself that question, you'll find out that there's a big imbalance there. So it takes time and repetition to master anything. And because loving yourself is so important, taking that time and repeating the process, whatever you've decided is going to be your loving yourself practice for the moment, that repetition is necessary, and you will not be able to repeat. You will not have that repetition, that practice, unless you set aside the time. So who benefits if we don't master ourselves? If you don't really control yourself, do you have the ability to control anything around you? No, absolutely not. Just try to pick up something around you without controlling your body. Yeah, it's not going to happen. So if we want to have the greatest impact in the world, if we want to have the best ability to love others, to give to others, to share our gifts, we have to master ourselves. And you're not going to be able to master what you don't value. And the first thing to do as far as mastering yourself is to start loving yourself. So put that time into loving yourself, and time allows for that space to develop the practice to be able to love with ourselves. So one of the practices that's been very, very profound for me is called mirror work. And it's really, really simple. The first time that I did this, I actually did it for about 30 minutes straight. It was so, so profound. It kind of caught me off guard, but it's so simple that this is something that now I do for a couple minutes every single day because it is just so amazingly tactile in its ability to help me to feel that love that I have for myself. So the first thing that you need to do for mirror work is find a mirror. Surprise. I know that sounds really tough. And the second thing that you need to do for mirror work is to look into that mirror, right? Super, super complicated. All right. So once you find a mirror and you start looking in that mirror, what you want to do is you want to look into your own eyes. You want to gaze into your own eyes in a relaxed way, okay? Either pick an eye and look directly into that eye, or just relax your vision until you notice that the image of yourself in that mirror, that both eyes kind of come together and start to merge together. This, your eyes relaxing, you're just looking straight forward, and you're just going to kind of see one, maybe slightly off of two eyes. And you want to gaze into your eyes as if you were looking into the eyes of someone extremely special to you. So if you were just gazing lovingly into your lover's eyes, into your parents' eyes, into one of your children's eyes, into your best friend's eyes, how would you tell them that you love them if the only thing that you could speak with would be your eyes? And you're going to give that to yourself in that image of yourself in the mirror. While you're gazing lovingly into your eyes, you're going to practice feeling positive emotions. And it doesn't really matter which ones you start with. You could start with whichever one's the easiest, but each one of these has a lot of benefit, and it's going to be slightly different impact on you. So you could choose love, you could choose peace, you could choose joy, you could choose gratitude. Gratitude is the one that I started with. I had a gratitude practice for quite a few years before this, so it was a really easy one for me to tap into. And then once I started feeling that and gazing into my own eyes, oh wow, I felt it almost immediately. But you could choose awe, you could choose fulfillment, you could choose pride, whatever it is, just gaze into that image in the mirror, look into those eyes, look into the eyes looking back at you, and really practice feeling one of those really, really high emotions. Now, the trick to this, and you'll cheat if you notice that you're smiling, if you notice that you're laughing, and it's really going to be kind of an uncomfortable laugh. If you just get super into joy, super into awe, super into gratitude, you might notice that yourself really authentically laughing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about kind of that awkward, this is just kind of weird, and I don't know if I really like doing this. It's that type of laughing that if that's what's going on, you're really cheating yourself. So do this with as much authenticity, as much dedication as you can. Like I said, if you were looking into the eyes of your lover, if you were looking into the eyes of your child, no smiling, no laughing, and keep that eye contact. My suggestion would be to set a really high goal in the beginning of doing this for about 10 to 15 minutes. All right. Now, your daily practice of this, once you really get the hang of it, can be much shorter. But in the very beginning, it's going to take a little bit of time for you to kind of ease into that place that's going to allow you to drop in and really feel this work. So the next practice that I came across, and again, I've known about this one for a long time, but this one was a really big struggle for me. And it's still a little bit of a struggle for me. But this is just the practice of receiving, the practice of accepting and acknowledging that you are worthy of receiving love. So give to yourself. Okay, practice receiving from yourself. Set aside time. Go take a bath. Paint your toenails. It's not a big one for me, but hey, maybe a great one for you. Have a bowl of ice cream. Whatever you can come up with to really reward yourself for being you, and practice receiving that reward. Okay. Practice receiving from others. This one's a big challenge for me. When someone wants to give something to me, I almost automatically go into, well, how can I make this a fair exchange? And that's not really loving, and that's not honoring of the other person and their desire to give and their gift. And it's not really honoring to myself. So practice receiving from others. When someone wants to give something to you, just say thank you. Just say thank you, and I would love to receive that. Give them some feedback, even although it may be a challenge in the beginning. Just let yourself receive when someone offers to give to you with no thought or no energy going into giving back to them. Say thank you to compliments. Someone compliments you rather than, oh no, and giving all those different excuses and playing small and doing the fake humility thing. Just say thank you. They're giving you that compliment for a reason. And it doesn't even really matter if they mean it. Just go ahead and receive that compliment because it's good for you, regardless of what the intentions are on the other side. Accept gifts and acts of service with no thought of reward or making it fair or giving back. Not that you're being selfish. This is just a practice. There's going to be times in which it's appropriate to have a fair exchange. Someone gives something to you, you want to give something back. Fair enough. But in this receiving practice, until you get really good at receiving, just go ahead and hold back for a little while on the returning of that, and just receive. Okay, ask for what you want. Do not be ashamed. Do not feel bad for your wants and desires. The key to being able to receive is letting others know, letting yourself know, what is it that you want? Having a want, having a desire is never, ever a bad thing, and there's no reason to ever be ashamed for a want and a desire. Now, acknowledge, just because you have a want and desire does not necessarily mean that you're going to get it. Just because you want something doesn't even mean it's good for you to get it. But having a want is a very, very beneficial thing. And so practice expressing those wants, practice expressing those desires with the knowledge and giving yourself and others the freedom that you may not necessarily get that. And that's okay. But just go ahead and ask for it, even if you know you're not going to get it. But when you do get it, celebrate the crap out of getting what you wanted. Okay, throw yourself a little party, do a little happy dance, hug whoever gave it to you, hug yourself for giving it to you. Celebrate every single time, no matter how big, no matter how small. Celebrate the fact that you got what you wanted. Okay, and lastly, be aware and consciously choose to let go of that urge to give in exchange. All right. One of the practices that actually my mom turned me on to is from a book called Love from Heaven. And this is a practice, it's actually a 7-day practice. This is a really good book. I highly recommend this book. But this is a 7-day practice. And we're going to go through this practice and we're going to kind of get the flavor of this practice here. As we go through it, but I do recommend I do recommend getting this book, and I do recommend taking an entire day to do each one of these exercises, if not doing each one of these exercises for an entire week. I found that very, very beneficial for myself. So this book, Love from Heaven, is by a lady named Lorna Byrne. I think that's how you pronounce her name, Byrne. She is an Irish mystic, and she was born with the ability to see angels. She was born with the ability to see entities that are just literally made of love, that are constantly all around us. They exist in a very different dimension than our perceptions can experience. Well, except for her perceptions, her sense organs can experience them. But for whatever reason, she was born with this gift. And I know the concept of angels may be a little bit of a taboo subject for you. You may say, I don't believe in that stuff. And fair enough. What I'm going to ask is that you just are open to trying this. Even if you don't necessarily take on the belief of this, just be open to the fact that there's a lot going on outside of our senses. And one of those things may be super loving beings. All right. This is a very, very powerful tool through this exercise. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through this exercise. So everybody just kind of relax. And as we go through this, just feel this. Okay. So the first step in this exercise is a prayer. Now, again, this may be a taboo subject for you. You may not believe that there is a God, and that's totally fine. But just kind of go along with this for right now. If there is no such thing as a God, it's not going to matter if you send up a prayer or not. All right. So let's all say this prayer together. Dear God, please help me to release that most precious gift that you have given me of love. That gift of love that is connected, to my soul. Amen. So the first thing, and the day one, is to acknowledge that you are love. The first step in this is to go ahead and get a baby picture of yourself. This is a baby picture of me. I'm all the way down at the very bottom right. And the other pictures are of my daughters whenever they were babies. And whether or not you have a picture of yourself, you can look at that baby picture of yourself, or you can just look at any picture of any baby. When we come into this world, we are total and complete pure love. There is not an ounce of hate in a baby whatsoever. They don't have the capacity to do so. When we come into this world as that pure being of love, the only thing that we want is to experience life, to love, and to be loved. This is our authentic state before the world and our society and maybe even our family started piling on top of all of that love, all of this other stuff that eventually convinced us at some point that we were something other than just pure love. So in that baby picture, when we're looking in their eyes, look at how much love is in these little innocent beings. Look at how much love is in a person who just is first coming into this world. Up underneath all of that stuff, what we truly are is pure love. So the statement that we're going to make throughout the day is, I am pure love. Day two is, I choose to love myself more. Loving ourselves is simply a choice. That's all it is. That's the biggest challenge that most of us will have in this process, is not truly making that choice. Once we make that choice, everything else starts to really come along and flow on itself. So this exercise right here, the day two exercise, oh man, this one hit me. I was bawling at the end of this exercise. So I'm going to guide you through this exercise right now. We're going to ask God and the angels to help us all out right now. So just relax, just sit back, just close your eyes. I'll tell you when you need to open them. Breathe in your nose and out your mouth. And I want you to imagine that in front of you is a beautiful, large treasure chest. Okay, I want you to really imagine the details of that treasure chest. Inside that treasure chest is the most precious gift that you and the world could possibly receive. Inside that treasure chest is all of the love that has been either withheld or repressed, either by you and or from you, for whatever reason. Inside that chest is all the love that you have to give and that you have to receive, that for whatever reason hasn't been able to be accessed yet. And in your hand is a key. It's an old-fashioned key. I want you to look down and I want you to really imagine that you could feel the weight of that key. Imagine the size and the shape of that key. Allow your imagination to go. Allow the details to really get filled in for the size and the shape and all of the artistic design. Or does it have some jewels on it, or is there some writing on it? Is it engraved? Does it have ribbon on it? What does your key look like? How big is that key? How heavy is that key? Really feel that key. And you're going to give yourself permission to unlock that chest, just to see how much love is really in there. How much love are you here to give and receive? You don't have to commit to keeping that chest open. You can always close it again. But for just now, just give yourself permission just to open up that chest. And you're going to feel and imagine yourself leaning forward. You're going to feel that key sliding into the lock. You're going to turn the key, hear the click, and you're going to open the top of that chest. Let it go wide open and just feel all of that love that's in there. All of that love that you are. All of that love that's there for you. All of that love that you're here to give. Just allow yourself to just experience all of that love that for whatever reason has been repressed, withheld, or locked away. And go ahead and open your eyes. Come on back. Now, in the comments, if you guys wouldn't mind, do me a favor and just kind of write down some of the experiences that you've had. This will kind of help fuel us and help us keeping moving forward. There's going to be a time to share. So if you don't get a chance to type it into the comments, if you would be very, very brave and at the end of this, share one of your experiences. This would really help all of us out. What you have to share, whether that's a positive or a negative, what you have to share is going to be very beneficial, not only for myself so that I can continue improving this, but for also everybody that's listening or watching or reading. So day 3 is to recognize that loving yourself is not selfish. Okay? What is selfish about having a full tank? What could possibly be selfish about you being fueled and satisfied? What could possibly be selfish about you being fully present and fulfilled and authentic? If you are fully fueled, how much more impact can you have in the world? So on day 3, it's really about owning the concept of taking time for yourself and giving that love to yourself, whether that's a bath, whether that's taking yourself out on a date, whether that's reading a good book, whether that's just relaxing on the front porch, whatever it is. Day 3 is all about taking that time and consciously giving love to yourself, no matter what that looks like. So just take a moment. And how do you love yourself? What are the things, what are the practices that you have in your life? What are the ways that you show your self-love? Okay, and the daily statement that we do on day 3 is, it is okay to love myself. Even though, some of us may have been convinced that it was a bad thing at one point in our life, now we're going to reclaim that. We're going to take that back, and we are going to practice loving ourselves. Day 4 is, you are deserving of love. Why are you deserving of love? The universe, the wholeness of all that is, would not be complete without a you. For whatever reason, nature, God, existence, evolution, whatever you want to call it, decided that this existence was not complete without a you. All right? You are so, so important to the fulfillment of the whole. All right? How do you think, if the universe could feel, if God could feel, knowing that there would not be completeness without you, how do you think the universe feels about you? How do you think the universe feels about a part that completes its wholeness? If God feels that way about you, if the universe feels that way about you, if these angels feel that way about you, couldn't you practice feeling that way about you for a little while? So the statement for day 4 is, I am deserving of love. All right. Day 5, you are unique. There is no one who has ever been, nor anyone who will ever be like you. There is only one you that will ever exist. There's only the you to give that unique gift that you have to the rest of existence. So, like Margaret Mead says, always remember you are absolutely unique, just like everyone else. So, the daily statement for day 5 is I love myself. There is no one in the world like me. Day 6 is there is love all around us constantly. The question is, are we aware of it? Or we get so caught up into our head that that we don't notice all the love that's around us. So day 6, we want to spend some time just being and just observing all of those small, tiny acts of love that we can possibly identify. Okay, it could be a smile. It could be the way that a mother bird feeds her babies. It could be someone holding the door for someone else. It could be a hug. It could be a thank you. It could be a fair exchange somewhere. It could be a breath that you take. How loving is it that the sun is continuing to shine on the earth? There is love all around us. And on day 6, we're just going to take a conscious focus and being able to perceive all of the little and big acts of love that are constantly happening around us. So the daily statement is there is an abundance of love in my life. And we're going to continue to say that statement all through day 6 or week 6, whichever one you choose. These are practices you could easily do for an entire week on their own. And the day 7 is celebrate. Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. When you love yourself more, you are happier. And who doesn't benefit from a happier you? That benefits everybody. So how would your life be different if you celebrated more? Well, one thing, you would be happier. And what would happen in your life? What would happen to those around you if you went through life much happier than you have been? So the daily statement in day 7 is, I love myself. Okay. And we're going to celebrate the crap out of that. So we're going to go ahead and bring this back. There we go. So that's all for the presentation. Now, let's go ahead and open this up. And bring everybody on. I'm going to check the chat here in a minute, but I'm going to try to bring everybody on. And if anybody wants to voice any questions, if anybody has anything that they would like to share or ask, please do so now. Remember, you never know how far what you say or do is going to affect someone. So as I bring everybody up here on this screen, if there's anything that you would like to say or any questions that you have, you can raise your hand. You can type it in the chat. If you raise your hand, we'll unmute you. We'll pull up the chat right here and see. Here we go. Good. Awesome. So it looks like a lot of people felt what was going on. Yeah, letting go of giving in exchange is totally a huge challenge for me there, Connie. I totally got you. Casey, you said you felt a flood of energy. That's awesome. Kirsten, this exercise is really hard. Kirsten, it's really hard for me too. I feel you on that one. You could create the key in your mind, but you struggled imagining all the love coming out of the chest. And I get it. And, in the very beginning, I was just kind of looking in that chest. It wasn't even coming out of it. But at the end, I was bawling because it's like, oh my gosh, how did I stuff all this love in that chest? Wow. What was that? How did all that love even get in there? Yeah, Connie, the chest was bulging open. Yeah, and absolutely, Connie, I will attest to that. Connie has got some crazy, crazy love to be giving. Yeah, Carrie, Sherry, yeah, I was crying too. The universe is absolutely full of love. Amory, awesome. You felt your chest open and the light swallowed the room. That is amazing. I am so proud of you. Um, Kathy, seeing yourself as a small baby and laughing, yeah, that's a really powerful image. And having no concept that there's anything other than being loved and loving. That what an amazing gift that we could give to the world if we could go through life like that. Yes, it's hard to resist the exchange, Tracy. I feel you there, and I'm so glad that you were able to open that chest. And whenever we start crying, that's really our body processing a lot of this stuff. And yeah, Tracy, you definitely have a lot of fiery love to give. So how lucky are we to be able to be in your life and receive some of that fiery love? So does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? You could either raise your hand or you can type it in the chat. Hopefully this was beneficial to everybody. Like I said, this was a really, really powerful thing that I was forced into over the past couple of months. Well, not really forced into, I definitely embraced it after a little while, but it is not something I was looking forward to practicing. Circumstances presented themselves in a way which I've got more time on my hands, and I'm using that time to love myself more. And all of us are going to have the time on our hands a lot more recently. Sherry, repeat the daily statements. Okay, let's see. We'll go to share screen. Back over here to these daily statements. All right, so day one, the daily statement is, I am pure love. Day two, the daily statement is, I choose to love myself more. Day three, the statement is, it is okay to love myself. Day four, the statement is, I am deserving of love. Day five, the statement is, I love myself. There is no one in the world like me. Day six, the statement is, there is an abundance of love in my life. And day seven is simply, I love myself. Connie's got it. Boom. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So unless anybody else has any questions, unless anybody else has any comments, thank you so much for, oh, we got three more. Yes, awesome. I want to thank everybody so much for showing up. This was a really a heart-bearing and a soul-bearing one for me. I apologize to anybody that has felt the heaviness in the practice over the past few months while I've been going through this. My goal is to come through this much, much stronger than I went into it with. So thank you very, very much for joining us. Thank you for being part of our community. Thank you for being here in this physical existence with all of us. Like I said, the world, the universe would not be complete without you. My life would not be complete without you. So know that I love you very, very much. And I can do that more so now because I love myself more so now. So thanks again for showing up. Whenever you see this, on our YouTube channel or on our Facebook page. Please, if you know somebody that you know is struggling with loving themselves, please share this video with them. We got to get the word out. We need to help more people to understand what it means to love ourselves, give more people the ability to practice loving ourselves. But I think more importantly than all of that, is to help people to understand and to feel that they are worthy and deserving of loving themselves. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you guys soon.